Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th annual UAGC Early Childhood Conference. You are in for a real treat with this session, Digital Application for Social Emotional Learning, inspired by Dixie's Pixar's Inside Out. I have talked to Dr. Hubley on our podcast, Early Childhood Chatter, and you are going to really enjoy this. So we're super excited. I am going to give him the proper introduction that he deserves. Dr. Sam Hubley is an assistant research professor at the Renee Crown Wellness Institute and the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at the University of Colorado Boulder. His research focuses on novel delivery methods of evidence-based psychological treatments and art-based approaches to mental health and wellness education. Dr. Hubley, we are so excited you're here with us today.
Me too.
All right, on the next screen, you are going to see a disclaimer. And we would like for you to take just a moment to read through this disclaimer so that you are empowered with knowledge before we get started. All right. On the next screen, you're also going to see another disclaimer. And then together, we're going to embark upon some exciting topics in early childhood education. And Dr. Hubley, I'm super excited. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. What a sweet welcome and introduction. And I'm so glad you all are here to learn more about this app we've been developing, inspired by Disney and Pixar's Inside Out. We call it Inside You. You'll see a preview of Inside You in a moment, but I just wanted to set some background context for some of the inspiration for why we created this app in the first place. We're in the middle of a youth mental health crisis, and recent data from the Centers for Disease Control has shown us that over 30 million kids are experiencing poor mental health. That's over 40% of young people aged 18 and younger. And if you think about the young people that you know, chances are that up to half of them are not doing so well. This has led to an increase in emergency room visits for psychiatric problems that are up 25% compared to pre-pandemic levels. And in some cases, these episodes end in one of the worst tragedies any parent can imagine, which is when their kids die by suicide. It really begs the question, how are we going to support all the youth in our communities? Here at the Renee Crown Institute, we like to imagine what a better world could look like. And one thing that we like to imagine is, what if every young person knew their emotions inside out and had fun doing it? The idea for this app really came during the release of the first Inside Out movie in 2015. This movie, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It tells the story of a 12-year-old girl named Riley who moves from the Midwest to San Francisco, but we really see the story through the lens of these 5 emotions that live inside her mind: fear, disgust, sadness, anger, and joy. Now, this is a fun Oscar-winning Pixar movie, but when I saw it, I really started thinking about this framework called social emotional learning. This is an image from the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning that outlines the 5 basic domains: self-awareness and social awareness. Am I able to identify my own emotions? Do I have accurate self-perceptions? Do I recognize my own strengths? And when it comes to other people, am I able to take their perspective, develop empathy for their experience? The other domains of social emotional learning, or SEL for short, are skills for myself. We call that self-management or self-regulation, and relationship skills. And can you coalesce all that together into responsible decision making that's based on your own identity, your own values, and what your goals are? Social emotional learning is typically practiced in classrooms. It is accompanied by social emotional learning curriculum and guidelines for instruction that typically take place in schools. But there's also an increasing movement to do social emotional learning with families and in the community. And that is a big part of the reason why we developed this app. For me, Inside Out joins this long list of animated movies that are at once highly entertaining and highly educative at the same time. There's a whole field called entertainment education that really formalizes this blend between media and learning. And we use this model to create Inside You. Here's a picture of our home screen. It's titled Why We Do the Things That We Do. And currently we've built out 4 episodes. I'd like to show you a quick preview of episode 1. And at the end of the presentation, I'll share a link with you where you can access this app for free.
Have you ever thought about what's going on inside your head? Why you do the things you do? Or about why you feel happy? Or sad? Or scared? Or disgusted? Or angry? Your mind is a beautiful thing. It's really cool and really complicated. When you understand how it all works, you will be able to better help yourself and others every day. And I'm here to help you on your journey. Yes, you. Hello. I'm a mind worker here in headquarters. Mind workers help everything run smoothly and keep your mind from being boggled. But I get to do some fun stuff too, like showing you the ropes.
So that's a little taste of Inside You. You saw 3 of our primary elements with the app. One is a film montage of different scenes from the movie combined together so that we can do storytelling in a way that's accessible to young people and parents and educators. You see this interaction with a mind worker that kind of functions like you're having a text chat with somebody. And then if you try the app out yourself, you'll see the main interactivities that we have, which will allow you to explore these concepts in more depth and potentially personalize them. For the rest of this presentation, I'd like to anchor into what we call the design cycle at the Crown Institute. The Crown Institute is focused on the wellness of young people and helping young people cultivate the inner resources needed for a lifetime of wellness. And we do this with the following model. We start every project by building trusted teams. And those trusted teams include academics. I represent the field of clinical psychology. We also have lots of colleagues from education, from ethnic studies, from computer science, from the Department of Music and Theater and Dance. All of our teams include not only academics, but a community partner as well. And I'll share a bit more about how we've been working very closely with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Denver as our community partner to design and build this app. In step 2, we really take time to identify and understand the topics that we're trying to address, not only from an academic and in my case, clinical perspective, but also from the community perspective of people with lived experience. And based on that shared understanding of what we're trying to address, we do collaborative design, or co-design for short, where we invite, in this case, young people right to the design table before we even build anything. And I'll step you through an example of how we co-designed one of the episodes in this app. We do traditional research to evaluate and refine our programs. And when they're successful and ready for larger scale consumption, we figure out ways to scale and sustain them. So let me take you through a historical tour of how we built this app. First, we started with our team. Internal at the university here at the Renee Crown Wellness Institute. I'm talking to you as the project director. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and, as Dr. Shipley mentioned, an associate research professor at the University of Colorado Boulder. My colleague, Dr. Julia Zigarelli, is also a licensed clinical child psychologist and our deputy director here at the Crown Institute. Ryan Guild is our senior project manager and brings a wealth of experience from a cognitive developmental perspective. And we involve young people in all of our projects, and we get to work with Morgan Johnson, who is one of our undergraduate research fellows. One of our primary partners is Liquid Interactive, who's a design and engineering firm based in Brisbane, Australia. They came highly recommended from Pixar, who contracts them to do a lot of work. We worked primarily with Sam Daly, who's head of product, and Gianni Tills, who's the content designer, and a whole host of software engineers who built the app that you just saw. We also work with artists from Hope Alive Records. And the montage that you saw, that was all original music created and produced by Matt Goodwin. And the voiceover artist for the Mind Worker is Danielle Ponder. We collaborate with colleagues from the College of Media and Communication and Informatics here at CU Boulder, led by Dr. Tara Knight and her students. And then we have a number of other partner organizations. We've been working very closely with Pixar Animation Studios for the past 6 years on this project. I mentioned that we're very close relationship with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Denver, and we're starting to expand with other clubs. Part of this work has been supported by the CU Boulder Office for Outreach and Engagement and the Sutherland Foundation. And we've also worked with a PR firm to help with this final step of scaling and sustaining. So let me tell you a little bit more about the second step here of identifying and understanding. We've already seen this social emotional learning framework once before, but I wanted to draw our attention to this domain, self-awareness, which is really what we focused our first 4 episodes on. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier was somatic awareness. That's the sense of what's happening inside my body while I'm experiencing emotions. We knew that we wanted to create an episode on this relationship because it's critically important to understanding your own experience is also understanding what's happening in your body. From an academic perspective, I think about things along these lines. This was a really interesting study published in 2020 that mapped out how different people experience different emotions. And the colors indicate where people are feeling sensations, or in some cases, where people are feeling an absence of sensations. So these warmer colors indicate higher activity, cooler colors indicate less activity. And you can see for some people that the experience of anger tends to be a lot in the head and upper body, whereas the experience of happiness is also highly activated, but across the whole body. Now, what's so interesting to me is how complex this is. And it's the case that people vary extremely in how much they show different emotions within their body. And the same person can vary from point to point in time, where in the morning they might experience anger more in their head, but in the evening it's more in their stomach, or that can change over the course of the year. This can get really complicated. And if we're designing an application to help kids learn about emotions, we need to understand their perspectives too, not just the academic perspective. So let me tell you about 6 sessions that we held in the summer of 2023 with 12 different youth. We started by playing some Minecraft because that's what we knew these kids like to do. We played a little bit of Minecraft and then we paused the game and asked the kids to talk about the characters that they were playing and what types of emotions they might be feeling and how those emotions might be showing up in their body by representing different colors. In a subsequent session, we started to collect some data and we started to notice that the words that kids used to describe what was happening for these characters kind of fell into these different categories. One category was around movement. One category was like the qualitative feel of energy in the body, and another was around tension. And if you start to look at these, you can see that some of these things are, like pretty literal. That, in some cases, especially if you're feeling sad, you can feel kind of sleepy or that you might actually start snoring. Others tend to be very more metaphorical and poetic, like a bee buzzing inside your body, or I love this one right here, which is like sometimes anger can have this quality of like metallic sorrow. It was really interesting to see like the range of words kids use to describe basically the physiology of emotions. When we coded all of our data, here were some of the main takeaways that these youth members at the Boys and Girls Clubs do have wisdom and internal awareness over their emotions, but describing those sensations in words can be really tricky. We also learned that the mind-body connection is not the first place that members go all the time. And it could be the case that these abstract representations of what we're feeling internally may be easier and honestly more fun. So we took this information back to our design partners and we started to flesh out what this might look like in an app. We started with these questions. Of these two made-up shapes and made-up names, which one is a booba and which one is a kiki? Now, there's no right answer here, but oftentimes people will describe this shape with the soft edges as a booba, and this shape with the pointy edges is a kiki. There's something universal about the way that shapes look and words sound that invokes some kind of feeling. If you've seen the first Inside Out movie, there's a scene where the characters, who are three-dimensional, go into this zone of abstraction and end up looking like Picasso characters. And based on what we learned from our co-design sessions, we started to play around with what it would look like to layer shapes on one another to create a sense of calm, where the edges are smooth, the colors are a little bit warmer, and how that would contrast with the feeling or the representation of what anger would look like, which would be warmer colors and sharper edges and stronger contrasts. We thought it would be really cool to anchor all of this into the inside out console where the emotions come up and influence what the character is feeling, and to kind of have it feel like a DJ soundboard, where you can modify the different representations and shapes and colors and movement of these in ways that map on to what words and images kids use to describe these sensations. And thus, we created the sensation visualizer, or as one of the kids at the Boys and Girls Clubs in Denver renamed it affectionately, the Splat. So there's a point in episode 3 where we invite kids to represent what emotions feel like in the body by making their own unique splat. And they move these little levers and dials here on the console to change the shape. So they could change this shape to be super pointy or super rounded. They can change the color and the way that these background shape moves, and entirely this whole backdrop on which this is set to give it a certain mood. There's also buttons over here that start to create a soundscape, and you can layer on different sounds that accompany the way that you are feeling in a given moment. This is just one example of how we have sat down with kids, really sought to identify and understand the topics that we wanted, and then work through a collaborative design process to create something that makes sense to us as psychologists and scientists, but is also fun and engaging for the kids and meets them where they're at. Moving on to step 4, where we focus on the evaluation and refinement of our program, we are currently working with this crew of professionals at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Denver. This is their mental health team, all of whom are licensed mental health professionals that spread out across the 20 plus clubs in Denver. And not only did we work with the kids on designing the app, we worked with this team to design a curriculum that they could use to accompany the app and work with groups of kids. So we worked with 5 of these folks and developed 4 lesson plans and are now testing that model in the context of a small open trial at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Denver. We launched this program in the spring of 2024, and our target number is 50 to 60 kids. These are kids aged 6 to 13 years old. And we're focused not just on traditional learning outcomes, like can kids more accurately identify their emotions? Can kids understand the function of these emotions? Can they pause at certain times and reflect on what that emotion wants them to do and instead pick something that is more consistent with their goal in a given situation? Those are all very traditional outcomes that you would measure in a social emotional learning program, and we are assessing those. We're also assessing engagement. If you recall that a huge inspiration for this app was creating something that was educative for sure, but was also very entertaining. And we really want to make sure that this is a fun experience for kids, because we know that if it's fun, it'll lead to better uptake. And if we have better uptake, we'll have better learning. So we're still in the process of collecting our last round of data and analyzing it, but I wanted to share just 2 anecdotes from what we've heard from kids. This is a direct quote from one of the youth members who's played the app, and she said that she would describe it as interesting, delightful, and fun. And these last 2 words in particular really stick out to me because I've been involved in many different programs with children. And oftentimes when you're talking about social emotional learning curriculum or psychotherapy, Delightful and fun are not usual words kids use to describe those experiences. And it really shows us that we are hitting our mark of making something that is at first interactive, is at first engaging before we start to do the explicit learning. This is very meaningful to us that kids are experiencing this as an engaging and fun program. This is a longer quote from one of the mental health professionals that was pictured earlier. They said that I have found this group to be highly successful with our members who have a more extensive trauma history. This app has allowed our members to better understand themselves and their needs. I recently had the club director share with me that one of our third graders, who was attending the Inside You group, was able to have a conversation with the club director about what triggers him and what he needs. This is a conversation that was unprompted by an adult and was organic to the situation. This member was able to advocate for himself and utilize the verbiage used in Inside You. This conversation is proof that our kids are being impacted in a positive way. And I just love this quote because it aligns so closely with what we have in the app. And ultimately, what we really care about is that it inspires kids to reflect and understand their experience in a different way, and ultimately advocate for themselves that are in ways that are consistent with their goals. And at least with this kid, it sounds like it's happening. We're very excited to see the rest of our pilot data, which will be ready later this fall. And finally, I'd like to share a little bit about our approach to scaling and sustaining this program. Currently, we are in 20 clubs, boys and girls clubs in Metro Denver, and we're seeking to grow the presence of this program in other clubs. By the end of this summer, we're hoping to be in 30 new clubs with a focus not just in Colorado, but we're starting to expand into other states. And we received some funding to really target these two areas in Louisville, Kentucky, and Asheville, North Carolina. By the end of the fall, our goal is to be in 50 clubs, expanding out to the whole states of Kentucky, North Carolina, and really focusing on rural Colorado. And by the end of this year, we're hoping that we can be in 100 different clubs, primarily working through the national network of boys and girls clubs throughout the entire country. We also have some targets for the number of users that are accessing the app through a press release and a marketing campaign. Our goal was to reach 3,000 users in the spring of 2024 when we released the app. That was really focused on capturing people here in Colorado up and along the Front Range from Pueblo, Colorado up to Fort Collins. We're hoping to be by 6,000 folks by the end of this summer, expanding our outreach to Kentucky, North Carolina, and Colorado. And then our goal is to have 10,000 users by the end of this winter. And that would be a national audience. We are well on our way. We worked with this company called Scenario, who's a public relations firm, and they helped us develop a press release that we shared out in February of 2024. That resulted in 37 unique pieces of media, one of which was a live news appearance, that's pictured right here. And based on our Google Analytics tracking, we have already acquired 7,500 new users in the last 6 months since we released our app. So we are well on our way to reaching our target goal of 10,000 folks. And I'd like to conclude with our next steps. As I mentioned, we're starting to outreach and do new trainings with new clubs, both in Colorado and in rural Colorado, but also in new states. Just last week, we were in Kentucky and initiated our partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Kentuckiana and Louisville, Kentucky. And later this fall, we'll be heading to North Carolina. We received another small grant to focus directly on working with parents. Up until now, our emphasis has really been working with the Boys and Girls Clubs and after-school providers. And we would really like to extend that work so that parents can learn more about the app, both for their own emotional awareness and to help their kids. I'm guessing that some people have seen the new Inside Out 2 movie, which has broken all sorts of records as the most successful animated movie of all time. and couple our marketing efforts along with not just the release of the movie earlier in June, but when it moves over to Disney Plus. We'll be doing another ad campaign later this fall to increase our membership. And then we're really interested in developing new social emotional learning content. We've really only been able to develop 4 episodes thus far, and we would like to expand that into a whole catalog of episodes that focus not just on the awareness piece, but on the self-regulation piece. Once I understand my emotions better and the sequence of how they come about, what types of triggers call to the console, different types of emotions, what is my pattern of behavior when that emotion is on board? Once you lay that foundation of understanding down, can we then teach kids skills to regulate, to help those emotions help themselves and achieve what they want in a given situation? Can we start to use these characters to think about what other people are going through? Some of my favorite scenes in Inside Out are when we get to zoom into other people's minds and see what dad's emotions look like, our mom's emotions look like. That is such a great vehicle for imagining what somebody else might be experiencing and being able to connect that with that on a deeper level. We've also heard from lots of different collaborators how valuable it would be to create a version of this app in Spanish. And that is something that we're really hoping to accomplish within the next calendar year. So I hope you've enjoyed this short tour of the Inside You program. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to test out the app yourself, you can visit this website, insideu, the letter U, .colorado.edu. This will take you to a website where you can get started right away. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to log in. You don't need to create any user accounts. We tried to create something that was easy, fun, and immediately successful. So thank you so much for tuning in, and hope you enjoy the app if you try it.
I told you that this would be something that you wanted to see. So I hope that you will all find another session to attend.